Chapter 9. Suppose. Uncle was not the sort of man to do things by halves. Phil declared afterwards that the lunch was topping, and Alice, who had the makings of a good housekeeper, almost went dizzy, though looking at the menu and trying to make out how much it all cost. You see, there were 6 of them, and Uncle. While Uncle was drinking his coffee, that was another extra, Alice remembered, he made them all look up sharply by saying, "Suppose." He waited, and they waited. Then, without another word, he went on sipping his coffee. "Suppose what, please, Uncle?" ventured Phil, after a while. As the eldest member of the party, it seemed to be his place to speak. "Suppose, anything," said Uncle, with a smile. "I think I must have been daydreaming." "What's that?" promptly asked Kitty. "Oh, I was just thinking, suppose." He paused again. Joan began to feel frightened. He had said that before. "Suppose, we were caged in and the animals fed us." No wonder it had taken him so long to say. Joan and Alice looked at each other, and Phil and Wally looked at each other, but Kitty and Harold looked under the table. It is hard to know just what to do when an uncle goes mad, or seems to. Look at it this way. You young people are having a fine romp in the woods one day, when suddenly out pops a tiger. You start to run away, but there is a lion in the path. Then various other animals come along, tie you up with strung ropes, put you all in a cage, and then invite their jungle friends to pay 6pence or a shilling to look at you. And if they are kind-hearted, to throw buns and sweets for you to snatch at. Kitty felt inclined to cry. The prospect was awful. "I suppose they'd give us a tree to climb," said Phil. He always seemed to understand when Uncle was joking better than the others. "No doubt, and perhaps a pond to splash in." "Would they let us have 3 meals a day?" asked Alice. "We only give them 1. "The reptiles are only fed once a week on Fridays," said Wally, who had been studying the notice board. "I should want to come out sometimes," said Joan. "I should want to come out all the time," said Phil. "I see what Uncle means. The zoo is all jolly fine for us, but for the animals—" "Yes," said Uncle, "that's the point. The children who come here for entertainment, or as Miss Sparks would say, for instruction, ought now and again to remember that many of the animals are used to a very different life. Everything possible is done for their happiness, and I am sure a place like the Maypin Terrace, where they can roam in freedom, is very much better than the old-style cage. But still, well, we shouldn't like it, should we?" All this was a new point of view to Kitty. There was real sadness in her eyes, as she murmured that she felt very sorry for the poor animals. Of course, there is something to be said on the other side. Many animals have been born in the gardens, and have known no other life. Also, they are well fed and cared for, and are safe from the enemies who would prey on them in their native haunts. And some animals are undoubtedly really attracted to man. Keeping tame pets like dogs and rabbits is one thing, and I think every child should have a pet, and by studying its habits learn to care for it. But I never feel I can trust a boy who wants to take some wild thing like a blackbird or a squirrel and put it in a cage. It is horribly cruel." The wind stirred the tablecloth. Everyone looked round. Uncle had thrown his hat on an empty chair. He put out his hand to take it, but drew back hastily. Perched on the crown was a little bright-eyed, bushy-tailed creature. who seemed to be regarding him with interest and admiration. "Well, I never! Mr. Squirrel has been listening to my little lecture all the time." But the children quite forgot the lecture. They remembered it all their lives afterwards, though. In the excitement of finding crumbs, the squirrel was quite tame, and when, after a while, Joan stooped down and got it to take a cherry from her hand, it had been joined by quite a number of brothers and sisters. "Lucky creatures," said Uncle. "They are free all the time, and yet get all the advantages of the zoo. How the other animals must envy them." "Yes," said Wally, with an eye still on the notice board. "And they can feed whenever they like. I'd rather be a squirrel than a reptile." That once-a-week feeding time seemed quite to worry him.